Why do you need a team of experts around you? Now, Kiwis have this DIY mentality and we try and do stuff ourselves. And even if it means we've got a wonky deck, we probably accept that some of the time. But property is expensive and mistakes in property are really expensive. So it's important to get it right, and it's not efficient to learn all of the information you need to know yourself when you can employ the services of professionals. As a property investor, a true property investor, your focus should be on the big picture and growing your portfolio, not on the day-to-day running of the business itself. Not using a property tax accountant might mean that you end up paying more tax or paying tax sooner. It's really important that you treat this as a business, and if you can't afford the professionals you need, maybe don't get into this business. The professionals you're going to need are a really good lawyer who understands investment property, a good property tax accountant, and again, someone that specializes in property. You need an awesome property manager to help you manage the property. You need a great mortgage broker. You might need a chattel valuer and or a property valuer as well. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, you need someone to help you find properties. That could be a real estate agent, a property partner like someone like us, or a property coach. So what do these different professionals cost, and what's the cost of not using them? Let's look at a solicitor first. A solicitor might cost you a few $1,000s to get everything set up when you buy a property. If you try and do this yourself and you get it wrong, this can be a major cost, and you might put other assets at risk. Mortgage brokers are completely free most of the time. Now, the cost of not using a mortgage broker might be that you just get one offering from the bank, you might end up paying more in interest than you ought to, or you might put other assets at risk by having cross security. A mortgage broker gets paid by the bank for placing your mortgage with them, and they can often negotiate you a better deal than you doing it yourself. The cost of using an accountant can sometimes be a one-off setup fee in the initial instance, and that might be up to $1,000 if you're going to set up a look-through company to own your property. And then on an ongoing basis, it's about $1,000 a year. Now, the cost of not using a proper property tax accountant to file your returns could be that you miss an opportunity to have a tax offset, and therefore you'll end up paying tax sooner than you ought to. So a property manager charges a percentage of the rent that they collect, and generally this is somewhere between 7% to 10% depending on the property management firm and how they charge. They also charge a letting fee for finding the tenant. So if they find a tenant for you, you might pay between $500 or a week's worth of rent plus GST. If you don't use a property manager, it can cost you in a number of different ways. One of the ways is that if you fall foul of the legislation, you can receive a fine. Often you might get higher vacancy if you're doing it yourself. And also, what I've found in the past is if people manage their own properties, they tend not to keep up with the current market rent, so they achieve less over a longer period of time. A chattel valuation might cost you about $500, and this will give you a schedule of your assets that you can depreciate. If you don't get one of these, you'll pay tax sooner than if you do. So it's a really important step to get done at the start when you buy your investment property and before you file your first tax return with your tax accountant. Property partners and property coaches can vary in what they charge. So some of them can be free, others might charge $15,000 or $20,000 for sourcing your property. Real estate agents are generally free if you're using them as a finder's agent, but they might not necessarily get the same kind of deals as a full-time property coach. The cost of not using a property partner might be that you don't get access to deals that are only available through people like this. And so you might end up paying more for the same deal. One of the key criteria that I look for when I'm selecting a professional is what their experience has been in property specifically, and whether or not they're an investor themselves, whether or not they actually walk the talk.